Huge thank you to CIBC for making We Get It possible. Good evening, everyone. My name is Karine. I'm the program director with Young Adult Cancer Canada. Welcome to a new episode of We Get It. We Get It comes on every Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern. I hope you're joining us tonight and ready to once again hear stories that are definitely going to impact you. I know the story we're about to hear impacted me greatly. So tonight we are actually going to talk about psychological distress in relation to Yak Prime Study. So that's going to be our theme for the evening. And I am with Kai, a wonderful yacker in our community, who's agreed to talk about this topic with me. So we are going to dive into this tonight and have a conversation about what do we mean when we say that? Do we know about that? And hear a bit more about Kai's story. So that's going to be our theme for tonight. Tonight I am, well, this afternoon, it is afternoon for us, but let's say tonight because you're watching this maybe at night. I am wearing my hair up again because I've not cleaned or washed them at all in days. Don't tell anyone. I am wearing my Crush Cancer t-shirt. So changing that t-shirt, black t-shirt that says Crush Cancer on it because really cancer deserves to be crushed. And it is a gray, rainy, drizzly, foggy day in St. John's, Newfoundland for about the fourth day in a row. So this is where we are, and that's okay. And I am in awesome company. I am with Kai. Kai, thank you so much for being with me today and for agreeing to do this. How are you doing?
Not too bad.
Not too bad. We are together going to dive into the topic of psychological distress, but really kind of talking together about mental health and tying this to your story. So I'm very appreciative of your openness. You've always been quite open when it comes to talking about mental health and those real issues and questions. You've never been shy opening up about this. And I think you've allowed a lot of people to do the same. So I think it's awesome that you're with me today to do that.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So before we dive into your story a little bit more, I'm going to, like I was saying to Kai just before we started the recording, I'm going to set the table here. So 2017, we did we started a research called the Yak Prime Study. We surveyed 622 young adults, which makes it the biggest study of its kind with young adults in Canada. And we found a lot of information. We are working with a team of researchers. Dr. Sheila Garland, who is with Memorial University here in Newfoundland, was our dear partner in the creation of this project, and we're still digging and digging. So, what we're going to do actually with We Get It for the next 4 episodes, Kai being the first one with me, is us looking a bit deeper into some of what we found in the Yak Prime study that was really striking to us, and hopefully be able to inform our community members first to say, you know what? No, you're not crazy. This is normal in the young adult cancer experience. And for those of you who don't quite know what it means to have cancer as a young adult and to deal with everything related to that, well, hopefully those next 4 weeks of We Get It are going to inform you on a variety of issues. And so the first one, like I said, we really wanted to dig in to psychological distress because distress, as we will see today and in the weeks ahead, is attached to a lot of things. So just to clarify, what is psychological distress? We may all think we know, but here's the kind of scientific definition. Psychological distress describes the collective, unpleasant, or painful psychosocial responses that impair effective coping with cancer. Psychological distress can present as depression, anxiety, somatic symptoms, impaired relationships, and existential concerns. In general, basically, I think we all can relate when we speak of challenges of mental health. But as we speak of distress today, this is kind of what we're talking about. And just to give you a snapshot of some of the data and findings we did through Yak Prime Study, we have, sadly, it was not a big surprise to us because we've been working with young adults for 20 years now, but 46.7% of the young adults who participated in the study had moderate to severe distress. So just by itself, it is almost half of the young adults who have been coping with moderate to severe distress. And we also looked at comparing young adults who are dealing with cancer and those who are not. So, one of our question was, is it young adults in general? Is it the generation that is going through a lot of distress and it's kind of going to be the same? Or does cancer make things even harder? And what we found is yes, cancer makes things much harder. So young adults with cancer had a score. So in the testing and scoring of distress, that was between 25 and 30, where their matched peers, so young adults without cancer, were 15 and below. So that is a statistically in the research world very significant difference, which really means that yes, young adults deal with a big amount of distress. And as we digged into what could this be, and Kai will tell us a little bit about his story, but some of the things we found that were quite interesting that will inform the weeks ahead is body image dissatisfaction, fear of cancer recurrence, and poor social support were all associated with high levels of distress. So again, we could argue that a lot of things in life, if we list all those things, it would affect our mental health. But like we said, add the lens of cancer to all of that. And these are all elements that will really be impacted and that will impact distress. So they're all connected. So these are the snapshots. Really, there's a lot more to dig into through Yak Prime, but these are some of the big highlights when it comes to distress. So Kai, like I know I shared that information with you, but I would love for us to maybe, if you're okay with that, start with the beginning. So for those viewers and people listening in, to get to know you a little bit better, get to know your story a little bit better, and then talk about the mental health connection in your life and your story.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I'll start off with I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer back in about 2013. And I'm 30 now, and so I was 23 at the time. And before being diagnosed, mind you, I was born with visual impairments, so I've dealt with disability all my life, and in my teens I started struggling with my mental health. So for me, mental health is something that I was previously dealing with, but then cancer kind of added a different layer of difficulties onto me. And so I when I was dealing with thyroid cancer, dealt with some pretty significant complications that led to dealing with chronic pain. And so those kind of side effects of cancer have really taken a toll on me over the years. Um, and I, in the last 2 years, have really dealt with, um, difficulty with trying to address that chronic pain, difficulty with thinking about the future and having to continue to deal with chronic pain, anxiety around fear of recurrence because I have some lumps that are being looked into, all sorts of things like that. And it ended up leading me to be hospitalized because I was struggling, and I just felt like I couldn't do it anymore, and I couldn't do it alone, and I didn't feel like I was getting the support I needed from the medical care system either.
Mhm.
Um, And I think my journey is unique because it's not necessarily the typical journey of somebody that's dealt with thyroid cancer. I was very hopeful, you know, going into it. Everybody's like, "Oh, it's something that happens," and then you walk away from it. It's like it never happened. And
Yeah.
I don't think any cancer is like that, though. It takes a toll on you, and even years and years out, you're still worried that with that potential that it can come back, right?
Mhm.
And that leads to a certain amount of anxiety. And anxiety, anytime you go in for a medical test, you have this concern in the back of your mind, like, what if it's cancer? Because you've been told it before, so it could happen. It's very real that it can happen again.
Mhm.
um and something I also noticed, like dealing with my journey, is the isolation that happens when you're dealing with chronic illness or just illness in general.
Mhm.
um, I had a lot of friends that didn't understand the journey that I was going through, and ended up kind of trying to deal with things alone, which added to the distress that I was feeling, not feeling like I had a sense of community or a good support network. And it kind of all adds up into this big mess. Um, but I think the really positive thing is when I was Googling and I was trying to find, like, you're Googling one day and you're like, there's got to be something out there that's for, people who are young adults who are dealing with cancer. And that's when I came across YACC. And that's the first time I started to feel a sense of community, and I started to build my support network.
Mhm.
And I also started at that time to talk about what I was dealing with. And it's been difficult because, like I said, like in the last 2 years, I've really hit a point with my chronic pain that I was experiencing a lot of distress psychologically.
Mhm.
um, and so I'm still having to work through some of these things, even though I've built up some of my supports in my life. um, and I think, thankfully, I have a good counselor who I work with to try to address, um, even just like the trauma of dealing with cancer and side effects of cancer.
Mhm.
And we're, really trying to, I guess I'm, trying to re-examine like how I feel about my future, and come to a place of acceptance that, um, this is what's happened in my life. These are the side effects of what's happened. These are my very real struggles of what I'm dealing with. But it's possible to continue going forward, even if I have to shift the way I do things. And I've started reaching out even to the YACC community and saying, like, listen, guys, this is how I'm feeling.
Mhm.
I wonder if you guys feel the same. Like, is there anybody out there who's feeling similarly? Um, and one of the things I put out there that's been a very real struggle is this fear, or these thoughts I have around, um, I think for a lot of people that deal with difficulties in life, not everybody, there's a lot of messages around, um, you walking away from a difficulty in life being a stronger person. And
Mhm.
I haven't felt like that's been my journey with cancer. Like, I didn't feel like I came out of it stronger. I felt in many senses that I was weaker.
Mhm.
Um, and in many cases felt like, looking back, and I think about things, and when I'm feeling really low, I the thoughts about, like, well, I wish cancer had taken my life because I don't want to be in this situation I am in life right now.
Mhm.
um and I've shared those really difficult feelings with the ACT community, and I was basically surrounded by a whole bunch of support. And um I really want to be open about those feelings because I don't want there to be stigma surrounding having these thoughts,
Mhm.
um, and having this journey where you might not come out feeling stronger.
Mhm.
And I want people to know, like, no two people are the same in their experiences, even if even if the messages we see are that, like people talk about coming out of it and there's this stronger person and they're better for it, and these messages, it doesn't make your journey, your unique journey, less valid. um
No.
your unique story is what it is, and there is support there, from peers, who might have also dealt with the same things.
Oh, totally. Like I really appreciate what you're saying because I've seen, of course, I'm part of those conversations. I've seen you open your heart and being so honest and then allowing others to do the same because I agree with you. It's important to talk about those things. And I know as well because I see it. And even people, I didn't have cancer, but my friends or people I know who know I work with people with cancer, they say things always with good intentions, but sometimes those sentences of coming on the other side of it stronger and all of those things, it puts a lot of pressure. And to me, it really limits because to me, the way I see you, the way I see so many of our community members is all of you figuring out your path through all the ups and downs and the walls and the moments that you I was doing better and now I'm not sure I might have some. All of this is you building up resilience. It's you building up strength for day to day life. Sometimes it much more feels like survival than, oh, I'm on the other side and I'm feeling so much stronger. Like to me, there's this achievement attached sometimes to cancer and you get through it. And when you're on top, I still believe deep in my heart because I see it all the time in you and so many others that the growth is mind blowing, Kai. Like the growth I witness every day blows my mind, but the path is not always direct or as direct as everyone would want it to be. And yes, it is patched with some really fucking hard days. And if we don't talk about that ever, it's really hard to figure out your way through it. If you can't be open about, yeah, this is not good, I'm not feeling good. And then having, because I know you are one person who has reached out for support. So I think that's a big strength of yours. And who also have the capacity to speak openly and find the words and then allow others. And I think all those things can help. But it's never just I did A, B, C, D, and now I'm fine. It- that's not how mental health works. It would be lovely, but it's not, correct? It's more complicated than that.
Yeah, it's definitely like it's a journey you take, right? I don't think, you could even do, counseling and build up support networks and still not be in a mentally healthy place, right? Like you can do all these things and still be on the path to. And I think like mental health is kind of a journey of a lifetime. Like there's never like one, end place where you end up and you stay in that place for the rest of your life. I think, just depending on how you're feeling in a day, even can change where you might feel I'm in a mentally great place. And then an hour later, you're like, oh my gosh, I am not feeling great.
Yeah.
So like it's something that can move all over the map, and it's a journey. And it's good to do the things that, like you said, build resilience and, get you, to gain the skills that you need to cope with things when things are tough. And then, you just continue plugging forward on that journey.
Yeah, that's it. It is, you're right, because ultimately, sometimes I find it funny how we do, and maybe unconsciously, but there is like in the society in general and conversation in general, nobody really argues that physical health, and regardless of if it's fitness or feeling better or whatever, that's a work in progress. Like everybody seems to be on board with the fact that it's not, I started there and now I'm there and I never have to do anything to keep my physical health. It's the same thing for our mental health. And I think it's an illusion to think, to your point, that once we hit a certain space, there's never going to be any change. It's like, no, I'm perfect all the time now. I think having difficult days, even though we don't want them, But to me, and through conversations I've had with, I remember with you on the mountain, definitely, like Kai and I hiked a mountain together, two mountains really, but I was with him the entire time, which was amazing. But conversations talking where it's like, well, actually, there are moments that are extremely difficult in the cancer journey that actually allows for a better understanding of who you are, a better understanding of what you're capable of, or what you feel like you can't cope with anymore. And sometimes suffering and pain and moments that are difficult do give us a lot of insight about who we are. It's just not to your point, it is to seek support, to not stay stuck alone in the darkness on our own, trying to kind of swim in there forever. But I think that's life. We go through hard stuff sometimes, and ignoring it or saying get over it, or you had thyroid cancer, like so many of our young adults, like it's the good cancer. Well, I don't know. I don't know who established that, but it's not how it works at all. And I think that's part of mental health. Part of what you're saying is the work in progress. It's like, well, I'm going to get through hard stuff. And some days it's not going to get better at the end of the day. And I'm going to have to go to bed with the fact that my day was shit, maybe felt bad all day. I'm going to sleep through it and then hope for tomorrow to be different and better and take it in the next day. And that's kind of sometimes that's the best we can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like the great thing about YACC, um, and for example, like the great thing about having spaces like the private YACC alumni group is that at any time in the day you
Mm-hmm.
can put up a post, and we have people across the country that are have awake at any different time of the day really that might respond, and you can be honest about how you're feeling. I know at first I was really nervous about posting some of the things about how I felt,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't know if people would understand why I was thinking that way, or why we kind of be led down the path of those having those thoughts. But I think what I've come out of it realizing is that, I think there's a lot of compassion, empathy, and understanding in our community,
Mm-hmm.
and I think people maybe they've never experienced it, or don't completely understand, but they definitely try to,
Mm-hmm.
and they're more than willing to come alongside you and say like you're not alone, we're all here for you, and people are willing to listen, and I think that's something that it helps break through that isolation that cancer causes and that mental health issues cause, and that building that support network, finding peers, finding people that you can talk to about these feelings. Like that's the great thing about spaces like that.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll put the information for those of you who are wondering. Young Adult Cancer Canada has a private space right now on Facebook with 1,300 young adults in there. So, to Kai's point, mental health and struggles related to cancer, they don't work on a schedule. So, sometimes, obviously, like I'm not up 24 hours, 7 days a week. And ultimately, to be honest, most times I have nothing to do in that group because peers together relate on a level that I can't. And they're often very good and able in supporting each other and sharing because, yes, it's not like, oh, I only feel bad between 9 and 5. Anyone who's had struggles know that's not at all how it works. And you're right in saying, I think finding spaces and communities where you can speak of those things uh, is quite useful because it's not, yeah, it's not easy sometimes to sit with those things on our own. Sometimes we need to, sometimes we need to be in silence with ourselves saying, okay, what's going on? But then there comes a time where externalizing some of what we're feeling can really help, because your peers are going to normalize the experience. They're going to say, I get it, or I don't, but I'm here for you and I love you. And so I think all of those things have value when we're in a bit of a crisis. There's like a lot in what you said. And again, like sometimes I speak when we do those episodes, our community members know that very well. Those close to them know that very well. But a lot of what Kai shared with us in just the last few minutes, it does speak very loudly on. We say all the time, I think I say it every episode, that it takes longer to recover from cancer than to be treated for it. And what we've noticed through Yak Prime Study and through our work is that often actually it comes after treatment for those who have a time where they're done treatment. Some of our community members don't, they are on treatment for life, but ultimately there's a time where mental health issues, distress, like you said, fear of the cancer coming back, for some the body image distress comes along because they have their scars and they're kind of dealing with all kinds of things. That comes when you're not intensively in treatment at the hospital every 3 days or every week, and then the overwhelming feeling comes. And that's why young adults in our community cope with distressing thoughts and distressing feelings months and sometimes years after their treatment, because that's the reality for many. It's not for you. I'm sure that when you were in the middle of having to get a bunch of treatment, I don't know, was it the worst time for you when it comes to your anxiety and distress, or was it different?
I think when I was, you know, in the midst of dealing with surgery and dealing with the immediate consequences and the complications, and then the few months later with the radiation treatment, that immediate stuff was, I would explain it as you really go into survival mode almost, where you're just your mind is focused on get through this moment, figure out what I need to do, get through it, right? You're almost hyper focused on um getting physically through it, and you almost sometimes set aside how you're mentally feeling. You might even set aside how you're totally feeling about it. I know for me, like I set aside a lot of my emotions around that time. I just kind of put it on a shelf and never addressed how I was feeling until years later, when some of those fears, like even nightmares about some of the really fearful moments came back to me, and I was like, wow, I was really afraid during that time, but I was so in survival mode, I didn't even feel it. I just was like right through it. That's it. And so I think it's something that when you get some distance away from it and you're kind of coming back out of survival mode, and all those feelings can start rushing in, and then you're starting to deal with kind of the mental effects of cancer, and all that you went through.
Yeah, so like accurate. I think I've heard some people, there are all kinds of analogies, but I've heard some people also speak of like it's like a tsunami. So the cancer happens, the shock of getting a cancer diagnosis in life in general at any age, but we argue that if you get it when you're young, it's definitely different. So you get that shock, and then to your point, yeah, a lot of people like you say exactly the same thing. It's like survival mode kicks in. So then you do everything you feel you have to do to get through it, to get better at some point. And yeah, often we put stuff, but then like a tsunami, like the earthquake happened somewhere, and then eventually the wave comes in, and the wave is a different size for different people for all kinds of reasons. Like some people have a little less distress, some people have a lot more. To your point, many of our young adults in our community, cancer was not the first challenge in their life. They had many other challenges before cancer. So cancer came and piled on top of everything else. So it's not like this isolated event where my life was absolutely perfect except for cancer. Like there are other things in life. So all of those elements, when the survival mode kind of did almost like the high alert and high vigilance lowers a bit, yeah, emotions come up. And a lot of our people, I think, until, like you said, Kai, until they either talk to a healthcare provider and healthcare professional who gets it, or community members for a long time feel very inadequate, thinking, well, I'm done treatment. If that's the case, I should be grateful. I should just feel lucky. I should this and this, and then they should on themselves a lot because they think that they're doing something wrong, because all of a sudden they're feeling. Some people have said to me, Karine, I'd never felt anxious really in my life until I got cancer. So I didn't even know what those emotions were. All of a sudden, I was feeling things that I never experienced. And that's, those realities and the size of the wave are different. And you know what? Sometimes there are more than one waves that comes. And so I think it is for those watching, if you're experiencing this and you're listening to Kai and relating to some of what he's sharing, I hope it helps you feel like you're just doing your best right now, and that there is help that you can reach out to. And if you're kind of someone watching who hasn't experienced cancer, but who knows someone, and you've been wondering, like, it's been a while, like he or she or they are not really catching feeling better, and they're still staying at home on the weekend. Well, maybe there are reasons that are related to the mental health that you can't see. It's not visible all the time. It's not obvious all the time what goes on in people's lives. So sometimes I think having this kind of heightened compassion, like you said, Kai, and level of awareness that other people go through a lot of stuff, and to be kind and loving and patient with them through it, uh, can really make a big difference, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any, my dear, any last words or words of wisdom that you would like to share? It could be like something that really helps you or helped you, or anything that you would like to leave around the topic of mental health and cancer.
I guess not to be maybe I wonder if it's cliche or something, but I would say like something that I try to remind myself is it's okay to not be okay. Um, it is what it is. Your feelings are what they are. Um, and I sometimes it's just about riding them out in the moment that they're there. And community will be there when you're ready to talk about it, really. I don't think YACC is going anywhere. And I hope that young adults who haven't found YACC yet will be able to come across YACC just the way I did by Googling. And yeah, I think those are the things that I would leave with.
Yeah, I think it's wise words, Kai. One thing we found through Yak Prime is that feelings of connection, like feeling connected to the young adult cancer community, actually really impacts body distress, body image distress gets improved, and mental health is better for people who feel a sense of connection with community, which is significant. So, of course, to your point, it's not magical where the minute you talk to someone who gets you everything, but things do get a little better. And that's the whole point. And then with us, like for us at YAC, we do try, when we can't do everything, but we do try to say, okay, let me try and see if I can find help in your local community, in your city. Let me email a colleague of mine and see what they can do for you. And I think all of those things can be done. So ultimately, I think you said it a few times, Kai, but we hope that nobody feels like they have to deal with cancer and everything that comes with that when you're young alone. This is a heavy burden that should be shared, and that's why we want to be there at YAC, and people like Kai and so many others are here. So hopefully our chat today help with some of that. I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful to know you, and I'm grateful you're connected to the community and you are the person that you are. You do a lot for the community. And I thank you. And I thank you for the conversation today, Kai. Thank you for being so honest and open and willing to jump in and do this with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And as I do every Monday on Facebook and Instagram, sometimes when I remember myself and anyone who needs it to just breathe. Breath, like everything, is not the magic pill, but it is something that can really, truly help us, especially when we are struggling with anxiety. We've all have in some aspects or another in our lives. For most people, I would argue, definitely for people in our community dealing with cancer, supporting someone they love with cancer. So remember to just breathe, especially when things get really blurry, when things are really overwhelming and you don't know where to go. Stop, take a breath, and see if things are a bit clearer and easier for you to figure out. So that's my wisdom. Thank you again so much, Kai. Thank you to everyone who's watched tonight. And next week, we are going to have another guest, another survivor in our community who's going to come and talk about another issue about Yak Prime. So come back next Monday, 7 p.m. Thanks, Kai. Bye, everyone.